Good morning, I'm Maiki Oreta and you're watching Basis Points, where we dive deep into the numbers and the stories that drive our economy and shape our world. The headlines. Philippine Central Bank Chief Remolona Jr. signals room for more rate cuts, saying inflation is on what he's calling a target consistent path. Metro Pacific Tollways President and CEO Rogelio Singson is named Management Person of the Year by none other than the Management Association of the Philippines. The U.S. government considers breaking up Google in a move that could reshape how big tech operates. And Gen Z workers in Metro Manila are found to be the least satisfied with their jobs, according to a new survey. First, let's take a look at how Wall Street performed overnight. U.S. stocks rose for a second straight session, with the Dow Jones Industrial Average and the S&P 500 hitting record highs ahead of key inflation data expected to shed light on the Federal Reserve's plans for monetary policy easing in the coming months. The Dow Jones gained 1%, the S&P 500 rises by 0.7%, and the tech-heavy Nasdaq adds 0.6%. Over in Europe,
I really like the market action today, because interest rates on the back end of the curve around the 10-year Treasury yield are actually rising and stocks are holding their gains. So what does that all mean to an investor? It means that the market is pricing in good economic growth. We want good economic growth because that's going to help companies to produce earnings. And the market is not afraid of the higher interest rates. There are times where both stocks and bonds can actually go up at the same time. And that's a very bullish story for the economy and for investors in the stock market.
In Europe, the UK's FTSE 100 climbed 0.7%, marking its best day in nearly 3 weeks, with the biggest boost coming from real estate companies. Elsewhere in Germany, the DAX increases by 1%, while France's CAC 40 advances by 0.5%. Over in Asia, markets are in the green. Japan's Nikkei 225 is up by 0.5%, while South Korea's Kospi is up by 0.3%. Now down under, Australia's ASX 200 also rises by 0.5%. In the commodities market, oil prices are steady after a 2-day decline as U.S. crude inventories swell and markets await Israel's response to Iran's missile attack earlier last week. Now, Brent crude falls 0.8%, dropping below $77 a barrel. Meanwhile, gold remains flat as investors continue to favor equities. Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas Governor Remolona Jr. says inflation is on what he's calling a target consistent path, opening up room for more rate cuts. In an interview with Global Finance magazine, Remolona revealed that inflation is expected to settle at 3.3% this year, 2.9% next year, and at 3.3% in 2026, all within the central bank's 2 to 4% target range, even if some risks emerge. He adds that the BSP's decision to cut rates in August was based on its outlook for inflation and growth rather than on the timing of the U.S. Federal Reserve's actions. So far, the BSP's early rate cut has had little impact on the peso, which has only slightly weakened against the greenback. Remolona also notes that the central bank will keep watching out for risks to inflation, including higher electricity rates and external pressures. The government is relying on more public-private partnerships to offset the slight dip in its infrastructure budget. Budget Secretary Amenah Pangandaman says that the proposed 2025 budget includes a 1.5 trillion peso allocation for infrastructure spending, down 0.3% from the 1.51 trillion this year. The reduced budget still accounts for 5.7% of GDP, keeping with the government's plan. Now, Pangandaman is counting on the private sector to fill the funding gap through the newly enacted PPP code, as the bulk of the 3.18 trillion pesos worth of projects in the pipeline are related to infrastructure. She also stressed that infrastructure remains a top priority for the government. Now on to some rate policy decisions from overseas, which could have broader impacts on the global economy. As expected, New Zealand's central bank cuts interest rates by 50 basis points, bringing them down to 4.75%. The bank says that this move aims to keep inflation low and stable while avoiding unnecessary instability in output, employment, interest rates, and the exchange rate. The decision causes the Kiwi dollar to drop by 0.9%, reaching its lowest level since August 19th at 0.6 dollars. Now, this matters because rate cuts in smaller economies can signal shifts in monetary policy that could impact global trade and currency flows. Meanwhile, India's central bank holds its key interest rate at 6.5% for the 10th straight policy meeting, as expected. The bank, however, signals that rate cuts could be on the horizon, shifting its policy stance from withdrawal of accommodation to neutral amid early signs of an economic slowdown. As one of the world's largest emerging markets, India's policy decisions could affect foreign investments and global market sentiment. Over in the United States, newly released minutes from the central bank's September meeting reveal a split among policymakers over last month's unexpected supersized rate cut. Now, while a substantial majority supported a significant cut, some Fed officials pushed for a smaller quarter percentage point reduction, seeking more assurance that inflation was firmly on a downward path. The minutes show that in the end, the Fed voted for the larger 50 basis point cut, citing progress on inflation and the balance of risks against the labor market as the reasons for doing so. Now, this marked the Fed's first rate cut in over 4 years. Now, more trouble for Google as the U.S. government considers asking a judge to break up the tech giant. This follows an August court ruling that found Google used illegal practices to keep its dominance in online search. The Justice Department plans to propose fixes, which could include changes to prevent Google from keeping its search monopoly. The government might also ask the court to stop Google from paying to have its search engine pre-installed or set as the default on new devices. Google, however, plans to appeal, calling these measures radical. If approved, these changes could completely change how people search online, and by reducing Google's revenues, they could give competitors a better chance to grow. Elsewhere in the world, Indian tycoon Ratan Tata, who brought the Tata Group to the global stage, passes away. He was 86 years old and had been receiving intensive care in a hospital in Mumbai. On X, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi pays tribute to Tata, calling him a visionary business leader, a compassionate soul, and an extraordinary human being. Ratan Tata led the Tata Group for over 2 decades, transforming the 155-year-old conglomerate into a global empire spanning Jaguar, Land Rover, Tata Steel, aviation, and even salt pans. We're taking a quick break. Please stay with us as we dive deep into the numbers and the narratives that matter most to your bottom line. Welcome back to Basis Points. Trading at the Philippine Stock Exchange opened a few minutes ago. Let's take a look at the initial figures. Right now, the market is back in the green after dropping 1.5% yesterday. The PSE index is up by 74.44. Broader all shares index up as well, up by 0.3% to 40.45. Taking a look at the sub indices, all are trading in the green except for the services counter, which is down by 0.7%. Meanwhile, at the foreign exchange market, the peso opens weaker from its previous close of 57.02, opening at 57.15 against the greenback. Now, Metro Pacific Tollways President and CEO Rogelio Singson is named Management Person of the Year for 2024. The Management Association of the Philippines is honoring Singson for his strong leadership, good governance, and for his anti-corruption efforts during his time as Public Works Secretary from 2010 to 2016. He is also being recognized for being a model of humility, ethical conduct, and spiritual integrity. The prestigious award is presented to individuals who have made significant contributions to the country's development and have helped shape national values. Elsewhere in the world, a South African court temporarily blocks billionaire Enrique Razon's takeover of the biggest container port in sub-Saharan Africa. Bloomberg reports that AP Moller Maersk, one of the world's largest shipping companies, is challenging the awarding of the project arguing that International Container Terminal Services, or ICTSI, does not meet a required solvency measure. APM Terminals, a unit of Maersk, was one of the unsuccessful bidders in the auction by state-owned Transnet to sell nearly half of the main terminal in Durban and operate it for 25 years. The so-called Transnet stays in place until the court hears the second part of APM Terminals' challenge. In July 2023, Transnet selected ICTSI as the preferred bidder for a joint venture to develop and upgrade the Durban Container Terminal. This is significant for the Philippines as ICTSI, a Philippine-owned global port operator, could strengthen the country's position in the international port industry if successful. Double Dragon, owned by billionaires Tony Tangkatjong and Injap Sia, is heading back to the debt market with plans to raise 30 billion pesos by 2026 through a retail bond sale. First tranche worth 5 billion pesos will be offered in the fourth quarter with an interest rate of 8% and a maturity of 5 to 7 years. The funds will be used to strengthen Double Dragon's financial position as it expands its hard assets recurring revenue portfolio. Now, the move is significant for investors looking for stable returns as retail bonds offer attractive interest rates compared to other fixed income options. Double Dragon's strong performance in the debt market could make this offering appealing for those seeking long-term yields. Now, this marks the company's second foray into the debt market this year, following a 10 billion peso issuance which was completed back in July. Now, another billionaire Manuel Pangilinan, led Meralco and South Korea's Doosan Enerbility signed a memorandum of understanding to explore strategic collaborations in low-carbon energy projects. This includes the potential deployment of nuclear power facilities using small modular reactors to address the country's growing energy demand. The partnership also considers the possibility of rehabilitating the idle Bataan nuclear power plant. This collaboration follows a feasibility study agreement between the Philippines and South Korea to revive the Bataan plant, which was announced during South Korean President Yoon Suk Yeol's state visit earlier this week. Other areas of cooperation include the deployment of greenhouse gas reduction technologies and developing gas turbines for Meralco's power projects. Now, this is significant for the Philippines as it could help boost energy supply, reduce carbon emissions, and improve energy security sustainably. Over in South America, billionaire entrepreneur Elon Musk gets some relief as Brazil's Supreme Court lifts a ban on his social media platform X. The ban was lifted after X met all the required conditions to resume operations, including paying large fines and blocking accounts that were flagged by the court. This comes as the platform was suspended in August due to the spread of misinformation and hate speech. Musk, however, criticized that suspension, calling it censorship. Brazil is one of X's largest markets with about 22 million users. We're taking a quick breather. Basis Points will be right back. Welcome back to Basis Points. OpenAI says it's seen several attempts to use its AI models to create fake content designed to influence elections. The maker of ChatGPT reports that cybercriminals are using its AI tools for malicious activities on websites and social media. So far, OpenAI has stopped over 20 attempts to produce articles on topics like the U.S. elections. The company also banned accounts from Rwanda that were used to generate fake comments about elections elsewhere. OpenAI says none of these attempts to influence elections went viral. Now, the story is significant with upcoming elections in both the United States and the Philippines. Protecting the integrity of the elections from digital manipulation is always a top priority. The Department of Finance secures more than 60 billion pesos in financing agreements from the South Korean government to fund 3 major infrastructure projects. This includes the first phase of the Laguna Lakeshore Road Network that will reduce travel time from Philinvest to Lower Bicutan to about 14 minutes from 34 minutes. The agreement will also finance the connection of Lawag Island and mainland Samar and the detailed engineering design of a development that will link the islands of Panay, Guimaras, and Negros. The deals, to be financed by the Export-Import Bank of Korea Economic Development Corporation Fund, were sealed during South Korean Yoon Suk-yeol's state visit to the country this week. Now, before we wrap up, a recent survey by recruitment platform JobStreet shows that Gen Z workers in Metro Manila are the least satisfied with their current roles. The main issues include low salaries, limited career growth, and a lack of work-life balance. On the other hand, workers in Mindanao were found to be the most satisfied with their careers. Overall, younger workers are pushing for more flexible work arrangements and better opportunities to stay engaged in their roles. Now, this matters because engaging the younger workforce is crucial to improving retention rates and boosting productivity, both of which impact business growth and our economy. And that's it for Basis Points. I'm Maiki Oreta. Keep it here on BNC, the Billionario News Channel, always on top.